And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, banking on local growth with Club Med South Africa to bring the first resort of its kind to the country. Good evening, welcome to the program. I'm Stephen Grootes. Good to be back with you, actually, after a short break. My thanks to Mateo Garipe for standing in as always. Always good to hear Mateo on the radio. You hear him in the mornings, of course, as well with the business bulletins, and you'll hear him again in the near future. Plenty coming up today, and strangely, while there wasn't a lot of corporate news, there's sort of a lot going on. Another, yet again, record price for gold. Some things haven't changed no matter how long I stay away. Fascinated by the big announcement around Canal Plus and MultiChoice. Finally, Canal Plus have operational control. You'll hear from the CEO at Canal Plus in just a couple of moments. And obviously lots to come around local content, around the future of MultiChoice, and in a way, the future of streaming as well. There was another big warning today about microfinancing. In other words, you go to someone, you borrow a little bit of money, and you pay it back over time. That's the sort of idea of it. The group that basically represents registered microfinance institutions actually quite concerned in some ways about how this is all panning out. And we talk about the risks of online gambling all the time. But the big danger that's being pointed to, and this is something that happens here and in many other places, is that I can go and borrow money from one microfinance organization and then another and another and another to buy clothes or furniture or something. And no one actually knows how much I earn. How much I owe is what I'm trying to say. And that then leads to all sorts of trouble when I can't pay it back. I was wondering if you might know, might have happened to you, might happen to someone you know, who just got so deep in debt to microfinance institutions they weren't able to get out of it. And there's a reason why so many of the organizations that consolidate debt are doing so well. But I'd really like to hear your story. I know you'll have one. You'll know someone who was in this position. And please, someone who is also able to get out of it. Would be good to hear that story on 011 883 0702 and 021 446 0567. A lot of people again talking about the state of Joburg. Helen Zille confirmed over the weekend as the DA's candidate to be the mayor of Joburg in the local elections, which are still currently due to be held next year, could perhaps be held in January 2027. We'll have to see how that pans out. But what I still don't see from the current people, the current ANC-led coalition in Joburg, is a way of fixing the situation in Joburg. That's what I don't see. There is still, I had to go and check that this hadn't happened while I was away, but there is still, as far as I can see, no transport member of the mayoral committee in Joburg. In other words, there is still no one in charge of fixing potholes in the city. And yes, someone will say, well, some of the roads are provincial and some are national. I'm really not interested. There is no one in Joburg who is in charge of fixing potholes. And until there is such a person, I can't really get a sense that things are going to change. And this is why I think there's quite a lot of political heat around Helen Zille's decision and the decision by the DA to put her forward as their mayoral candidate. Certainly going to make the local elections next year very, very interesting. Good to hear from you tonight, your views on that and other issues. 011 883 0702. 021 446 0567, and of course voice notes tonight please on 072 702 1702.
702. Stephen is on The Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
Confirmation today that the French-based company Canal Plus now has operational control of MultiChoice. In other words, the takeover bid has become unconditional. There'll be a new CEO at MultiChoice. Calvelo Mawela is no longer in charge there. He's going to be the chair of Canal Plus's Africa operations, and David Mignot becomes the new CEO at MultiChoice. The CEO at Canal Plus, the new owners of MultiChoice, is Maxime Saada, and he's on the line for you now. Maxime, good evening. I really do appreciate the time. I know you're not on the ground for too long and you've got a lot going on. MultiChoice is under pressure from many directions. On the face of it, it's losing subscribers. What are you looking for from MultiChoice? What are you going to do with it?
Well, MultiChoice has faced significant headwinds, macroeconomic headwinds, energy crisis in a number of countries, inflation, devaluation in other countries, and it's done a very good job of establishing itself as the clear television, audiovisual leader, media leader in continental Africa. So we're very thankful and appreciative of what has been done. And we think the assets are numerous in terms of content production, in terms of sports, relationships, in terms of brands with SuperSport. I mean, a number of assets are there. What we're going to do is combine these forces with those of Canal Plus to really bring the best of both worlds and the best available content on the planet to African consumers. And we're going to do that all across Africa, since this new company will cover more than 40 million subscribers over 70 countries, 40 of them in Africa. And we'll have 17,000 team members, part of this company. Half of them will be based in Africa. And so we are really set to establish this new company as the absolute best value proposition with the best user experience to all African consumers. And we will join forces and bring the best content from both companies to our consumers all across the geographies. And we intend to do that as quickly as possible. David Mignot, that you mentioned earlier, our new CEO for Africa, will really endeavor to make this a reality for African consumers as soon as this end of year. We will make sure that the value proposition is improved and enhanced.
So, I mean, the value proposition is the big thing because there's a hunger for content and entertainment. The trick is to do it at a price that most people in Africa can afford.
Yes, you're right. It's about bringing the best content and investing significant amount of money and resources into bringing the best content with the best potential world-class productions. MultiChoice has done in the past, sometimes with Canal+, with series like Chaka Ilembe and Spinners. And it's, as you know, the two companies are the leading broadcasters in the world of Champions League, of Premier League, of Formula One, of MotoGP, of rugby, and a number of sports competitions. And the challenge is to bring all of this at an accessible price. We're very, very careful of bringing the full spectrum of content, but also to make sure that the price is as affordable as possible. And this will be necessary for us to grow. As I mentioned, the way forward is growing. And to grow, we need to expand the customer base. And to expand the customer base, we need to have the full spectrum from, the most comprehensive and sometimes high-end offers to the most accessible offers, so that we can have some consumers who don't necessarily have the means to access the high-end offers to still get their fair share of premium content.
You have very tough competition. I mean, Disney, Netflix, there are others. They have very deep pockets. They have huge resources. They may, in some markets, even have some advantages over you. I mean, in a way, this is a sort of global fight for a market against very big competitors that you're taking on here.
Yes, well, this company, I mentioned the 70 countries, the 40 million subscribers. Now we are one of the biggest non-American company in the world. And I said that the ambition is to be among the top 5. 5 billion euros in annual investment in content, which is what this combined company will do, is significant, even by those American standards. And these companies that you mentioned, yes, in a way they are competitors, but mostly to us, they are partners. We buy all of their content. All the American movies, all the American studios have output deals with either Canal+, MultiChoice, or both. And as you know, Canal+ has positioned itself as a super aggregator, which aggregates Netflix, Apple TV+, Paramount+, and HBO Max into its own platform. So we have rolled out these agreements, and we just rolled out Netflix in French-speaking Africa, and we will continue this strategy. Really, our intent is to make their strength our strength and to leverage their content into our own and to make it, again, as accessible as possible to all African subscribers. Also want to highlight one big difference. We will invest in local content with local producers all across Africa, in movies, in series, documentaries, animation. This is a key area for us, and I believe a key differentiating factor going forward. There will be some content produced with world-class standards, but with an African voice, with a European voice, with a voice that is different than the one that is brought forward by Americans. We love their content, but they do things differently than we intend to do in the future.
I mean, there'll be a lot of people in our TV production, our film production industry that are very happy to hear you say that. What's going to happen with Showmax? Showmax was supposed to be the way in which MultiChoice was going to sort of try and compete in the rest of the world. And yet, as I understand it, it's not making money yet. Are you going to keep Showmax running?
It's a little early to answer that question. We have made no due diligence, and we will now start the detailed due diligence of the company. We have no knowledge of the contract, the structure, the commercial success, the cost and the investments of Showmax. So we will need to assess that as we go forward. It's a little early to answer that question. I'm sorry.
No, I understand, and thank you for the honesty. For a lot of South African customers, they're going to want to know what's going to change on MultiChoice by, say, in the next year. So let's say by July next year or so. You talk about making changes quickly, about enhancing, about improving the content offering, about cost and all the rest. Are we going to see those kind of changes on the MultiChoice platform that soon?
Yeah, we want to move fast. We believe this will only become a reality when it becomes a reality for consumers. And of course, we intend to enhance the offer and really to bring more content to our customers all across geographies. And we know how to do that because these companies together, Canal Plus and MultiChoice, produce more than 10,000 hours of local content. Some of it is not available from Canal Plus on the MultiChoice areas, countries, and some of it from MultiChoice is not available today on the Canal Plus areas. So just by making this content available will bring significant benefit to the consumers of all countries.
I presume this is all really going to be streaming content. That would be the way forward. That does mean, though, in Africa, not everyone has access to data in the way that people do in Europe. Are you going to be looking at deals that might include, say, to subscribers, there'll be a data deal in there to make sure they can actually access your content? I mean, sure, there are millions of satellite dishes across Africa, but I don't know how much growth is left in that business.
Well, satellite is very dear to us because you mentioned access earlier, and satellite is really the only technology that enables an operator such as ourselves to reach all population. And broadband and digital is important because it brings new services, but it cannot reach what satellite can reach. So the way we see this thing is by combining both, really. Having a hybrid model where we bring DTH satellite with the best, as you know, video and audio quality of content. And when the consumer has the opportunity to access digital services, then these digital services are made available to him for free. So they come alongside and he has a choice of the technology he uses and the services he uses. And that's the way we see things going forward, really relying on both.
There are 3 South African news channels on MultiChoice right now. You now are the effective sort of owner of the platform. I presume you're going to allow them to continue with their own editorial policies. You're not going to interfere with the way in which they produce and broadcast South African news on the MultiChoice platform.
Yeah, you presume correctly. We have been in Africa for more than 3 decades as Canal Plus, and we have never done any news channel or show in those 3 decades. We do not see the point of us being involved in any news. This is not our business. Our business is really bringing entertainment to people and sports, of course. So we have made a commitment during the process in South Africa that Canal Plus will not be part of the news operations. We, as you know, have created a company called License Co. This company holds the MultiChoice license in South Africa, and this company in which we have a minority stake and a minority voting power, so we don't control this company, will be in charge of the news and the news channels. But we have also committed that these news channels will continue going forward. So all of the current news channels available on the platform will continue to be available on the platform.
Maxime Saada, the CEO at Canal Plus, I really appreciate the time on The Money Show. Thank you.
The Money Show
With Stephen Grootes.
Well, listening to that, Duncan McLeod, the founder and editor at Techcentral.co.za. Duncan, good evening. Quite a sort of bullish case being put forward there by Maxime Saada. And clearly, though, there is a lot that they need to do and they want to do it quite quickly.
Yes, interesting interview. They've got a lot on their plate. They're bullish about the African opportunity, but I think we should also be aware of the fact that MultiChoice has been going in the wrong direction for a couple of years now. They've been losing customers, particularly at the high end, as the market has become more competitive, but also as the market has become more price sensitive, as the economy has been treading water for a number of years now. Consumers have been switching out, particularly I think people who aren't sports fans have been switching away from MultiChoice's premium bouquets and choosing streaming alternatives instead, as fiber has proliferated across South Africa's cities and towns. The likes of Netflix and Disney and Amazon Prime Video, there's a lot of them, a lot of choice out there which didn't exist 10 years ago. And consumers are voting with their feet, and we're seeing that in the MultiChoice and the DSTV numbers. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, but they've promised a full strategic update by early next year. We know that MultiChoice has already been working on a revamp of DSTV in the way they package their bouquets and talking about potentially more flexible pricing and different bundle options and all that sort of thing. They've also said that they need to compete more effectively for the youth audience against the likes of YouTube and TikTok. We know that kids today get their entertainment on their smartphones, not from big screen TVs. So there's a lot of shifts happening in the market, and I think the new management team in South Africa, the new management team looking after MultiChoice has got its work cut out for it in reversing the decline we've seen in recent years.
I mean, some of it's quite complicated. You want to get more people. You want to make sure that people who are with you stay. And yet to do that, you're probably going to need to charge them less at the same time as you're trying to scale up to take on the sort of big American companies.
Exactly, and I think they're going to have to become a lot more nimble in the way they approach the market. Certainly their traditional customer base, and there will be a large subset of their customers, are still quite content with the offering as it stands. They've got a dish on their roof and a decoder, and they watch the rugby on the weekends and enjoy the entertainment offerings that MultiChoice and DSTV offer. But the market is shifting, particularly amongst younger audiences, and I think what we're seeing the market move to is more sort of an on-demand type of model where people sit down in front of the TV or hop onto their tablet or computer or smartphone and they watch what they want. They're not so much interested in this idea of linear television anymore, that you will watch the news at 8 p.m., for example. People want to increasingly just want to watch entertainment that they want to watch at a time convenient to them. So the market is very much shifting, and at the same time, I think that consumers are becoming a lot more fickle, and they're jumping in and out of packages. And I personally know lots of friends who subscribe to Netflix or Apple TV Plus for a couple of months, watch there, and then they switch over to another platform and consume content there. And I think DSTV is going to have to become, or MultiChoice is going to have to become a lot more nimble in the way it approaches the market, offering weekly packages, for example, that allow consumers to come in when they want to. I think they can probably learn a lot from the mobile industry, where the prepaid space in particular, where people buy data when it's convenient to them and use that data. I think maybe we need to move beyond the model of, you sign up for MultiChoice and pay a monthly bill to, okay, I'd like to buy a weekend of entertainment now, and I'd like to include some sport with that and some movies. And I think the company is going to have to be a lot more nimble in the way it offers these packages to consumers. And I think the old way of doing things, where you subscribe to a bouquet and pay at the end of the month, is slowly on its way out.
Duncan McLeod, thank you, founder and editor at Techcentral. You with The Money Show, 26 minutes after 6.
The Money Show.
The Markets.
Tana Mongwe is a portfolio manager at Macro Solutions at the Old Mutual Investment Group. Tana, good evening. I mean, it's interesting to watch the MultiChoice story. In some ways, depending on how you look at it, there could be a lot of growth. In other ways, they're under pressure.
Good evening, Stephen. Good evening to your listeners. I mean, absolutely. I mean, the previous speaker spoke about the pressure that MultiChoice has been under for the last few years with losing subscribers, etc. But, it's interesting. It will be interesting to see what Canal Plus brings to the table. They look like they want to move fast. They've already completed the reorganization. And quite importantly, I mean, they've said that they will, allow local content to remain within local content. And that's, I think, quite material and important. But quite interesting to see what they will do with MultiChoice to actually bring back subscribers and to grow the new way of actually consuming a TV.
So bored with this conversation, but so interested in it too. Another record gold price today, and it seems to be pulling platinum up. I mean, that sort of fascinating relationship between the two.
Yep, gold continues to just keep touching the record highs. And I mean, last week we saw with the US Fed once again reducing interest rates and flagging that we might have more interest rate cuts coming into the rest of the year. That just caused more uncertainty, more macroeconomic uncertainty in terms of, the weakness of the American market and overall geopolitical risks. And that is what gold needs. But yes, it's been pulling up the platinum price because we've been seeing a substitution away, especially in the jewelry market, from the very high gold price to a smaller but still stronger platinum market. For platinum, I suppose we're seeing a more structurally positive market going into the end of the decade, just given by the deficits outside of just the jewelry market, but more in the auto vehicle space, given the penetration of BEVs, or rather the slower penetration of BEVs. So more structural, and see a clearer pathway within the platinum and PGM group metals. But yes, gold keeps knocking those record highs.
And then cement is fascinating at the moment. PPC had an operational update today. They're sort of halfway through a kind of, I think they call their strategy Awakening the Sleeping Giant. They do seem to be making some progress in that recovery.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just a 4-month update, but it is showing, execution. Well, evidence of execution from their strategy. And you know what? It's a company that has been under pressure with the industry being in overcapacity. Within South Africa anyway, not having those import tariffs for cement imports. But you're seeing in the other geographies like Zimbabwe, where volumes are growing quite strongly on the introduction of import tariffs, particularly in that industry. And just sort of self-help options that the company is exploring in terms of, selling non-core assets, driving efficiencies, reducing costs to drive profitability and improve margins, which speaks to the turnaround plan. And I think we're going to start seeing, it's early days, but we're going to start seeing the fruits of this toward the end of the decade.
Tana Mongwe, thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Portfolio Manager at Macro Solutions at the Old Mutual Investment Group. You're with The Money Show, just gone 6:30.
The Money Show
With Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
and DSTV channel 856.
Well, you heard the conversation a little earlier about the future of MultiChoice. What for you would make you choose one streaming service over another? I think for most people, it is simply about content. Price is a factor. They're all priced sort of roughly the similar sort of space at the moment, I suppose, depending. But what for you has made you choose the streaming service that you're using at the moment? Be good to hear from you on that this evening. The launch today of a new renewable energy company. It's called Anthem. It's the result of a merger between the Ideas Fund, the McLeod Energy Fund, and Nor Fund. The company says that they will be able to drive investment in green energy in Southern Africa. The CEO at Anthem is James Cumming. James, good evening. I really do appreciate your time. So you've created this company from these funds. What are you planning to do? How are you going to drive renewable energy investment in Southern Africa?
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for having me. Yeah, well, the formation of the business is actually the coming together of established entities in the renewable space, African Clean Energy Developments, which was formerly a delivery and development platform standing alone, and our sister company, Eames Africa, which was an asset management company running the plants that we would develop and deliver. And so together we have put the component parts into a single entity. It's called Anthem. And as you mentioned, those are the shareholders in this new platform. So we have a live project portfolio of about 2.7 gigawatts of projects. 1.1 gigawatts of those are already operational, a mix of wind and solar, mostly in the renewables program, REAP, selling to Eskom, but of late we've been developing projects and selling into the private market. And we've got some presence in Eswatini, and we plan to continue doing what we've been doing. We're building 450 megawatts of projects, and we're going to be closing more than that in the near term.
There's still, it seems to me, bizarrely after all this time, a little bit of policy uncertainty in the sort of private market space. Yes, NERSA, the energy regulator, has given trading licenses to certain companies. Eskom's gone to court to try and stop them. Is that going to slow you down at all, the fact that policy is still not as certain as really it should be by now?
We like to think you can't fight common sense. The country's got to transition away from coal. That fleet will be decommissioned over time, but we've got to do it slowly. We've got to do it in a considered way. And I think one of the key things Anthem is about is working as a collective and making sure we engage with government and Eskom and the regulator in such a way that we do it in a considered fashion. So yes, those are hindrances at the moment, but we think reasonableness will prevail, and we'll be able to continue growing in the private sector alongside Eskom's decommissioning and indeed their own growth plans in the renewable space. I think the advent of the wholesale market, which is due to open up next year, will be a real step forward in kind of leveling that playing field and all of us being able to compete on a level footing.
So, I mean, I completely agree with you over the longer term. I was interested to see, and there have been several points of data about this, that while there was sort of stage 6 load shedding, companies and homes invested everything they could in solar renewable energy. Then a lot of that investment fell away or dropped off the moment load shedding stopped. In the shorter term, do you still see the market? And I imagine, James, you're about to tell me how expensive Eskom power actually is.
I mean, look, these things just have to happen because we've got to keep the country growing, and power plants, no matter what the technology, have a particular lifespan. I think a lot of the investment into rooftop solar, was quite reactionary, but it's still necessary, and it's a segment that we think still needs to grow. So it's a matter of time and a matter of transition. And we're in the beginning stages of that transition, and it's not renewables only, but it's renewables alongside other technologies to ensure we can just all keep moving together.
The real issue, I think, is going to be cost, and so if availability starts to fall away, at least for lots of companies and in suburban areas, there's still load reduction, of course, but Eskom electricity is very expensive and is only going to get more so. The plants that you invest in, how do they compete on costs? Are they significantly cheaper than Eskom at this point?
I mean, these are sensitive commercial matters, often privy to PPA confidentiality, but typically we're able to beat conventional power, yes, both in solar and in wind. And we're even seeing the competitiveness of solar and BESS become more attractive. Again, it's about the time of day you're looking to deliver this power, and when you're competing with base load relative to the demand. But no, it's competitive power. It's no longer alternative. We're in the mainstream. It makes economic and environmental sense.
There are places in the world that politically are very much against renewable power and yet are investing in it at a huge rate. I mean, Texas is the first one that comes to mind, but there are other places like that. The economic case, it seems to me, is that renewable energy is probably only going to get cheaper over the longer term, and you obviously want to be a big part of that wave.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's obviously certain limitations. We can't produce it for free, but the growth in the technology and the pace of change has been radical, both in terms of the scale of the turbines we're building today relative to the turbines we were building when we started out back in 2010, 2012, they've tripled in scale. Similarly, PV modules have too. So it's a case of technological advancement, efficiency on the production line, and then also efficiency in the conversion of power, on site. So it's been incredible to see. We almost can't keep up, even with the permitting we're doing. We keep permitting larger and larger development envelopes, we call them, so sort of tip heights and blade lengths and tower heights. And by the time the project comes closer to construction, they take a long time to develop, yes. It's often the case that we're having to go and re-look at the permits we applied for a few years prior because the technology has advanced so much. And that comes with a lot of cost saving too, which is fantastic for the general public and also obviously the private power users we're selling to. We sell to the likes of Sasol, Sibanye, Rio Tinto's Richards Bay Minerals.
James Cumming, thanks very much indeed. The CEO at Anthem, 8 minutes now to 7.
The Money Show, Stephen Grootes, is brought to you by MFSA CIB, banking on local growth with Club Med South Africa to bring the first resort of its kind to the country.
6 minutes to 7 that time. Well, I'll be interested in your view on this. We've seen challenge after challenge against the new employment equity targets that have been brought in by the Employment and Labour Minister, Nkosazana Meth. Now, Business Unity South Africa joining these groups. The targets came into force 3 weeks ago. Earlier today, on 702 Drive, John Perlman spoke to the CEO at BUSA, Khulekane Mate, who explained the basis of their challenge.
Our challenge is not to the principle of transformation itself. Yes. We actually support transformation. What we're asking the court here is to help us resolve the issue of how the sectoral numerical targets were developed and finally implemented. We set out in our papers the fact that there was limited consultation time given to employers, in some instances less than a week. There was insufficient information provided, insufficient analysis of whether these targets were actually achievable from sector to sector.
Well, that was Khulekane Mate speaking on 702 Drive with John Perlman earlier. Galubwe Modisapuri is a labour law analyst, joins us now. Galubwe, good evening. I really do appreciate the time. From what I can see, much of the challenge is about technical issues, the way in which the regulations were passed. Is there a strong case to strike down these regulations?
The challenges so far, Stephen, and good evening to your listeners as well and to you. The challenges look very technical because I think this is the third challenge on the record. The first one was the DA one, which still has a judgment pending. The second one, I think, was with Nias and Sakelinga, which was an agent one. And the judgment came out and it was lost on a technical issue as well. But it seems the BUSA is approaching this on a slightly different angle. I haven't yet seen the papers they have before court, but it would seem that the challenge is slightly different. The question, though, might be whether it's the horse has not already bolted, which was one of the reasoning that came out in the Niasa court judgment. Quite interesting times indeed.
Well, I mean, I was slightly surprised that BUSA, of all people, would go to court, after the case, after they were brought in. Everybody knew when they were coming and everyone knew what they would be.
That's exactly the question around whether or not the horses, it's too late that the horses already bolted or not. And what's interesting is that they're taking the case to the labor court, whereas the DA and the Niasa's cases have gone to the High Court in Pretoria. So it will be very interesting to understand, in addition to their timing, but also understand their reasoning for taking the matter to the Labour Court as not elsewhere, over and above, not taking it earlier than right now.
As I understand the law and the constitution on this, government has the right to legislate for employment equity, to institute affirmative action. There are other cases around quotas. Some of those have seen government regulations or laws being struck down. How far can government go in enforcing what, if I've understood it correctly, in this case is the word targets?
It seems to me that there are two or three issues at the heart of this. The first one, which is probably the angle that the DA was coming from, was that the matter is about setting quotas. And the argument was that quotas are by law not permitted. So that's the first angle. I think the second angle is around which is part of what BUSA seems to be raising in this instance, is that the targets themselves don't seem to be realistic, but more importantly, for the purpose of fairness, both procedural and substantive, is that the argument seems to be that there has not been sufficient consultation with the stakeholders, and where there was some consultation, even a superficial one, many of the points raised in, and they mentioned that specific points, were not taken into consideration by the minister. And therefore the argument seems to be that there was a rush to to set the targets, and the targets are not realistic. So that's the second argument, the line of attack that seems to be on this case. And I think the last one is around whether or not the targets are realistic and achievable. And just maybe to mention one quick example of this, I was consulting with a client in the last 2 weeks, and one of the questions he raised was, I don't know how to deal with the new Employment Equity Act. I've always supported it in my previous careers across big corporates. Now I run a small business that employs no more than 500 employees. 3 of the people on the management team are also shareholders. Now, do the targets mean that I have to get rid of them because they have a specific profile? I have to get rid of them in the next 5 years or not? So there's a degree of uncertainty about what the target set actually means sectorally. And I think that's one of the issues. And the question then is, how exactly is it put before court for proper ventilation as argument to then address the issues?
There's going to be a big fight, I suspect. It's going to go on and on. Galaboya Mudasapuri, thanks very much indeed. Labour law analyst, you with The Money Show, 7 o'clock.
The Money Show on 702.
Monday to Friday, 6 to 8 p.m.
Well, the organisation MicroFinance SA, it represents microfinance organisations that are registered. They're calling for more responsibility from groups that offer what I suppose you would call buy now, pay later products. And they're concerned that more and more people are falling into debt and have no way of getting out of it. Leonie van Pletzen is the CEO of MicroFinance South Africa. Leonie, good evening. We all know how dangerous this phrase is, buy now, pay later. What have you noticed that's changing in the market?
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. I think there's a huge difference between a lay-by and a buy now, pay later product. So basically what you do is you go into a store or you go online and you purchase a product which you get immediately, but you pay it off in different installments. Now, the association, we welcome innovation, we welcome new financial products. However, what is concerning for us is the unrecorded debt exposure from the consumers. So this debt is not uploaded on the credit bureaus, which leaves other credit providers blind when they are offering credit. And there's also some consumer protection gaps. So unlike regulated credit under the NCA, BNPL providers often have limited obligations for affordability checks or disclosure of risks. So what we're seeing now is over-indebtedness, systemic risk, and we are just calling on regulators and on these buy now, pay later providers to work with the association to get to something sustainable.
Are you seeing new entrants to the market, or is it new sort of buy now, pay later products? I mean, what's leading to this particular moment?
So I think the buy now, pay later products are exploding. Just to say it the best I can, more consumers are using this product because they can't get access to legal credit where they have to do affordability or a credit check. So this is actually, it operates outside of the National Credit Act, and this is where consumers will get credit that don't usually, afford the credit within the regulated space. So we are seeing, consumers stacking up these products and then having difficulty to repay other credit providers, and they would rather pay these BNPL products.
So, the major problem is that, as you pointed out, there's no sort of central registry. So I can go and get a buy now, pay later product from this person, then that person, and someone else, and no one knows how much I owe, and then I simply can't get out of it. The only way really to get around that is some kind of central database, and that would be very complex.
Yes, so I think it is not that complex. Submissions to the credit bureaus can be done, and I know these BNPL providers are speaking to the South African Credit Risk and Reporting Association to see how this can be uploaded. But we also feel a very much needed affordability is required to see can this person actually afford this line of credit? Because they would usually get declined from the formal market, so then they would go to these BNPL players that play in this grey market, and they would get access to this line of credit.
There have been interventions from government in the past. There was the National Credit Act you referred to, and I remember that made major changes. Do we need more? Is it a legislative fix? I hate trying to fix things using the law, Leonie, because I don't think it works necessarily. Is there something else that we need to do?
So we are not calling for the restriction on innovation. So I think how we can, also assist these players and protect the consumer is through an industry code. Just to say, this is the areas where we want to protect the consumers. This is the areas where we want to sue credit bureau submissions and also affordability. I also don't believe in over-regulation. Maybe some changes to the National Credit Act should take place, but that's not going to happen overnight. So we are really asking for collaboration for these players because the association is talking to the National Credit Regulator, to the DTIC. Today we had a meeting with the FIC and we also have meetings with the FSCA on how this is affecting the consumer.
Is this all changing very quickly? Are we seeing a lot more people getting themselves into trouble than we did, say, 5 or 10 years ago?
Unfortunately, yes. There is a lot of the consumers, especially at the lower end of the market, which are getting themselves in a lot of trouble. And because there's no visibility on the bureaus, it's very difficult for other credit providers. So the registered credit providers are now getting, instances where the NCR is investigating them for reckless credit. However, they couldn't see these products when they were doing their affordability and their calculations. So much more exposure in this area. I think there's a need for this product. It can definitely work, but the visibility and the affordability is very important.
What happens if we do nothing? The situation's going to get worse and worse. More and more people are going to get into serious trouble and feel quite desperate.
Yeah, well, I don't even want to say it, but if we do nothing, there's going to be a major buy now, pay later credit bubble. And this thing is going to explode, and we will see consumers over-indebted and the regulated market even struggling more. So we don't want to over-regulate. We simply just want to protect the consumer and also make sure that other credit providers provide credit that the consumers can actually afford.
Are there examples of countries that have been able to not crack down, but just control this or regulate this in a sensible way? They've been able to keep the market going, retain the ability to allow innovation, and at the same time make sure that people are protected.
Yes, we've had meetings with the Australian regulator. They took us through their whole process on how they've done it. They've shared the changes in regulation that had to be made and also the industry code. So while we are waiting for the regulations to change, what these providers can sign with the industry to make sure that the consumer is protected. So there has been a lot of success stories. And the reason why there are success stories is because they saw how this could go south very quickly. And because the take-up is so high, it is important that we do something as soon as possible.
Thank you very much indeed. Leonie van Pletzen is the CEO of MicroFinance South Africa.
The Money Show.
Business Books.
Well, one of the most important pieces of reporting that we've seen in our country, really in the last decade, has been, it started with what was happening at Tembisa Hospital, the corruption that occurred there during the pandemic. And it now includes people who are in the news at the moment. Morgan Malmela, Kat McLeod, and in some ways, the former police minister, Becky Cele. It's a very complicated picture. And the person who's done more than anyone to investigate, put it all together, is Jeff Wicks, the investigative journalist. And he's now put it all together in a book called The Shadow State. Jeff, good evening. I really appreciate the time. It's an incredible story that you've reported on. It's been incredible reporting that you've done. When you started investigating, and I suppose for many of us, the story started with the killing of Babita Deokaran, is that what started it? Did you realize then how big all of this was?
Hi, Stephen, and thank you so much for having me on. Yes, the story started when Babita Deokaran was assassinated on the 23rd of August, 2021. And the second part of that question, no. I could have never even fathomed that it would even be half as big as it's become. But I think in death, Babita has become really an icon for whistleblowers and also become emblematic of what a real civil servant should be, someone who's not willing to bow to pressure and to stand up for what's right. And it informs our democracy in many ways, and her life has become bigger than the person that she was.
This is going to be a slightly strange thing, but one of my memories of the sort of Gupta era, or the state capture era, was when the Guptas landed at Waterkloof. That just explained something. And it sounds like a silly detail, but around Tembisa Hospital was the skinny jeans, that they were buying skinny jeans during a pandemic. It was a silly detail, but like the Gupta landing, it explained what was going on. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I wondered if that was kind of a moment that crystallized for many people how bad this really was, how bizarre it was.
I totally agree with you. I think so too, and I often think back to listening to the then suspended Tembisa Hospital CEO Ashley Mthunzi on Radio 702 trying to defend this purchase. And I mean, really spending R500,000 on children's clothing in the height of a pandemic just really sort of underlines the depravity of all of this. And when you sort of take stock of the hospital manager's defense at the time, which was, no, it was merely a clerical error, it's actually more jarring, because how can anyone process a purchase order that is listed with skinny jeans and on his version at the time should have been sutures?
Yeah, and then his wife, who runs a trade union, tried to defend him. I mean, it was an astonishing thing at the time. How difficult was it to get all of this information together? I was watching your reporting on News 24, watching it very closely, and I was amazed at the detail of it, and clearly, and I don't know how, and Jeff, I'm never going to ask you your source, you know that, but clearly you had access to the most interesting and important financial information that allowed you to piece it all together.
Yeah, well, I think the getting access to her cell phone and laptop, or at least the forensic image of those devices, it really broke the story open for us. I mean, we were chasing dead leads for months. And then when we got our hands on those gadgets 7 months after Babita was murdered, and we had them forensically examined, and this is all narrated in the book, so anyone who reads it will understand exactly how I got my hands on these. And once we had those, we had a trove of 60,000 Gauteng Health emails with all the ledgers, an unimpeachable record of evidence that they themselves could not deny the veracity of. And you know, the key or critical moment for me was the couple of seconds when we finally found Babita's report, which he'd filed into anomalous spending at Tembisa Hospital, freezing 100 million rand in outgoing payments, and then calling for a forensic investigation. The report that she filed 3 weeks before her murder, and likely the document that got her killed, and which informed all of our reporting and ultimately the book.
So many of this involves people that we're talking about now. I mean, it gets quite messy and complicated, but I mean, Kat McLeod seems to be involved. We have this huge inquiry underway now, which is linked to him and Senzo Mkhunu and all the rest. I mean, the story's not over yet by a long chalk, by the sounds of it.
No, I don't think so, and I think not to be overtly biased, but I think the book is recommended reading for anyone who wants to follow this commission, because a lot of the central characters are now being mentioned on a daily basis, if not in every second sentence. Kat Matlala is one of them, and what few people realize is that we would not know who Kat Matlala was had it not been for Babita Deokaran. She was literally the first person to put him on anyone's radar, because he had 3 companies in simultaneous trade with the hospital and was pulling out multi-million rand contracts. He also figured in with a larger syndicate that is responsible for nearly 500 million rands worth of extraction in just under 2 years. So it's important figures which are now dominating our discourse, and Babita was onto them 4 years ago.
When you've published all of this over time, and then when you've published the book now, has there been a reaction from anyone? I mean, from the police, the Hawks, the health minister, the people you were reporting on? I mean, has there been any kind of reaction at all?
No, nothing. Just, I mean, we pursued that entire project, and we were aggressive in our reporting. We went as far as saying this raises serious concerns about cover quoting and bid rigging and money laundering. And we never faced any comeback, similarly with the book. And it's almost depressing in a way, because it feels like it kind of just falls by the wayside. I think the most depressing aspect is the reaction of the Hawks, because I set out both on News 24 and now in the book how they completely failed to examine the digital evidence. The same laptop and cell phone that we got our hands on had been left in an evidence store to gather dust for 7 months. So the Hawks were in a darkness of their own making. And I think their silence in response to the book is telling. They've not come out and called me a liar. In fact, they've said nothing, which is quite significant in my view.
But it's also 500 million rand of health department money. Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi has said nothing. The minister before him, as far as I know, has said very little. The Gauteng Health MEC has been silent. The Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lesufi. I mean, and I'm deliberately mentioning him because, he's here, there and everywhere at the moment, you would think someone would say something. It must be astonishing.
Well, the last time we heard from he was just the newly installed Premier Lesotho back then was at the tail end of 2022. So nearly 3 years ago, we heard from him, and that was about the interim findings of the SIU's report. The sitting health MEC is equally absent. She has come to the first couple of annual memorials for Babita Deokaran's death and made a raft of promises, none of which she's kept. So, it does besmirch Babita Deokaran's memory in some way.
The people you've reported on, they're still involved in many things now. Have any of them sort of said to you they're not happy with your reporting? And I asked Jeff, out of a sense of sort of solidarity, because more and more we are seeing threats against people's lives. We know what happened to Babita, and you've done more than anyone I know to put all this information in the public domain.
Their silence has been somewhat surprising to me, Stephen. I mean, I've not heard from anyone, and we don't beat around or certainly I don't beat around the bush in the book. Call a spade, because that's what Babita found, and that's what this thing is morphed into. But I think it also speaks to just like this patent lack of accountability. It's been more than 4 years since she was murdered. We've not seen a single arrest in terms of corruption at that facility. We've only recently seen assets frozen. So, I mean, it tells you something about the pace that we can investigate complex financial crime. And I think it's really telling that, and I think it gives them locus to just, operate with impunity and just ignore how their public persona is battered, but it doesn't seem to trouble them in any other respect.
Jeff, there are very few of us in our profession who are actually able to move the needle, and I can think of maybe one or two people who've ever been able to move it as much as you have. So congratulations on your reporting over the years. It's been incredible. I think a testament to the life of Babita Deokaran, and congratulations on your book.
Oh, thank you so much, Stephen. I appreciate it.
Jeff Wicks is an investigative journalist. The book is called The Shadow State. As he says, I think if you want to understand what's happening now, the Commission of Inquiry and all the rest, that would probably be the place to start. 28 minutes after 7.
The Money Show. How I make my money.
Well, there are very few people in this world, in this country, who are able to keep going in the broadcasting career for, over 30 years. Someone who I think will be no stranger to you, especially if you watch any TV that has anything to do with sport at all. Neil Andrews is the SuperSport anchor. He does all sorts of things on TV and has been doing it for a very long time. And he joins us now. Neil, good evening, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us on The Money Show tonight.
It's an absolute honor. It truly is, Stephen. So, very pleased to be chatting to you. I just hope I can remember what's happened so many years ago.
Don't worry, we'll make it up. Isn't that usually the best broadcasting if we don't? I have to start with the obvious question. How did you get into it? And broadcasting is a funny game. There's no real qualification to be a good broadcaster. You either are or you aren't. How did it all start for you?
It's an excellent comment because I was very late to the party. I'll give you a sort of a road to how I got to the party. But when I first arrived at what was then just Mnet, it was before Mnet SuperSport, I looked around and others had got the break on me. The late, great Darren Scott was already well entrenched. Tinky Pringle was there. Arnold Geertz was there. Gary Bailey was there. And I was of a similar age, but they had certainly started 3-4 years before me. And in the case of a lot of them, had started in radio through Capital and exposure like that. I had come through an interesting. Well, I suppose now I'm going to out-trump them a bit. I did go to varsity. I suspect a lot of people in broadcasting can't spell varsity, so they didn't go there. But that delayed me. So I went to the university, then I went to the army. So when I finally arrived at Mnet, it was 1991. And I had got experience I was a horse racing commentator. So I got in through the horse racing door because MultiChoice at that stage, it was quite interesting. They had a couple of projects that Koos Becker, who had started Mnet, had a division called Communication Technologies, and he was smart enough, as we now all know, to work out that at some point in time that they'd saturate TV, with decoders. So they had alternative businesses lined up, and one of those was horse racing. Another one was MTN, which was, of course, hugely successful. So that's how I sort of came around the back door. It's a long-winded answer, but that's how it happened.
No, but that makes sense. But I mean, I wondered if timing was important. I mean, I know from my own career that what was changing in broadcasting was important to me, because a couple of years after you joined, you went from sort of Mnet and just one sports channel to a whole host of them, and there would have been a lot more work around for you.
Absolutely. I think you've got to be lucky. And oddly enough, I have a lot of youngsters asking me today how I did it, and I say exactly the same thing, that we're into an era now where everything is breaking up. Traditional broadcasting is no longer. So we've seen it with podcasts and with, various cameos that you can make either on linear or digital, which of course wasn't open to us back in the day. So you've got to seize that opportunity. But yes, I would say you have to be a bit lucky. And in that sense, I think I was lucky, yeah.
There's something about South African sport. Now, I mean, I was sorry, Neil, but still at school when all of this was happening. I mean, towards the end of it, to be fair. But it seemed to me that a couple of things happened. Yes, people will remember the first couple of matches that the Springboks played again, Bafana. But what really happened was quite often, quite regular international cricket. We were quite good at it. There was a very well-timed for us World Cup in 1992. It was something everybody started to watch. And I had a question. In a way, your job is to tell stories about sport. And I wondered if maybe it helps because South Africa, I think, but I'm asking you, you're more of an expert than I am, if our sporting stories are better than other countries' sporting stories.
I would say no. I think that there's stories wherever you dig. If you're prepared to look, there are stories. In a sense, I hear what you're saying, because of South Africa's past, and in particular the apartheid past and the previously disadvantaged, there are some additional stories. But I think you get that anywhere in the world. You get that rags to riches story, And interestingly enough, I was going to say the very first broadcast that really put Supersport on the map were boxing, because we took those great boxings of Hagler and Hearns and our own Brian Mitchell, and we started to broadcast those exclusively. And of course, that is very much a rags to riches story, because obviously not every boxer, but a lot of boxers, come up the tough way, the old Rocky movie style. So there's stories to tell there. But I look around and there's always stories to tell. So we're not exclusive in that department, but I think sport might be, because we love that thrill of the underdog. And it doesn't matter, even in today's modern day, you do get the upsets. You get upsets, whether it be at Wimbledon, whether it be at the Ryder Cup, whether it be rugby, cricket, soccer. There are stories to tell. Netball. So in that sense, I think it's more about being a sport rather than Hollywood movies, which are scripted. You cannot script sport. And I've just seen time and time again, I've been blessed to report and broadcast on events that no one saw the outcome of.
I mean, in sort of broadcasting speak, especially for TV, they call it, as you know, the live shared event. That's really the power of it, isn't it? The live shared event. I mean, a cricket test is 5 days of a live shared event. Golf, I mean, the most boring thing known to man, seems to go on forever. Horse racing is quite a short live shared event. But that's the magic of it. And you've been doing it for a long time. Clearly for you, and I can hear the enthusiasm when you talk about it now, but I can hear the enthusiasm when you talk about it on the telly. The enthusiasm for you is still there.
Oh, yes. No, I haven't lost any of that passion for it. And it's impossible to lose it, really, because of what I was saying. So coming back, let's use horse racing as one of the reasons why that's always been a great attraction for me, is because every year, whether it be
Recording
here in South Africa
Recording
or
in progress.
in the UK, they're new 3-year-olds. So you get a classic series. So your champions are coming through all the time, and they're new champions. It's the same, of course, with, again, tennis. over the years, I've seen when Becker took over on Wimbledon Centre Court, then the days of Federer, and now the days of, then we had the days of Nadal, and then Djokovic, and now you've got new champions. So that does happen in sport, but in horse racing, it happens every single year because you get a different 3-year-old champion, and the 3-year-old will come up against the 4-year-old in the Derby in July. So it's an ever-changing landscape, and I think that's what attracted me to the sport. I never saw myself in a role as a banker, bless their cotton socks, or an accountant, because it's the same old numbers. So what's attracted me, and particularly my style of broadcasting, is the alternative characters that I can play around with, interview, get on my shows and interact with, and everybody's got a different story. So I think that was my point of difference when I entered into the market. I did bring something which probably wasn't around regularly in sport, which was humour. It wasn't forced humour, but people kept saying to me, when I had that show Super Saturday, the difference was that we never took ourselves too seriously, and we found the enjoyment and entertainment in sport.
You have always had a sense of fun. And I sometimes wonder, and particularly if you look at the era we were coming out of, there wasn't a lot of fun around that was being had publicly. That really matters. People want to, that's the secret to good breakfast radio, is a little bit of fun, That's what you're able to bring. And clearly for you, it does come very naturally. You can see the joke. You can, get the Australian to tell the time Brian McMillan had a gun. All of those things come quite easily for you, it seems.
Yes, it does. I am blessed in that sense. So I'm lucky in that sense. I don't know whether I got that element of humor from my dad, who was a bit wacky. I think I'm not quite as wacky as he was, but there is that tongue-in-cheek element to everything. And then I think what you do in a broadcast career is you position yourself around people who you can get the best out of. So again, coming back to that Super Saturday show, because that's really where, from an award point of view, we won all the awards, was the chemistry. So again, it wasn't, let's pick this guy because I think he's funny. It was just really 4 or 5 mates having a good time and sharing it. So it's almost at times the cameras were, yes, rolling, but even if they hadn't been. In fact, it was quite interesting. I'm slightly off the point here, but we used to, a broadcast time, as you would probably know, Stephen, is at least 90 minutes before you broadcast. And the problem back in the day when we used to rock up with Super Saturday, we had so much fun in the 90 minutes leading up to the show that at times all the jokes were finished. So I said, this is not working. We have to arrive 15 minutes before broadcast, so at least we've got something funny to share on air, which always didn't go down very well. But I think it was very natural, and you've got to surround yourself with people with a dry sense of the humour, a bit wackiness, and that's what's worked.
And you've got to sort of build the rapport over time. We're speaking to Neil Andrews. He's the Supersport broadcaster and anchor. He's had a long career, plenty more to come from him. 13 minutes to 8.
The Money Show, how I make my money.
11 minutes to 8 the time. Neil Andrews, the Supersport broadcaster and anchor with us, had a very long career and done lots of things during that time. Neil, broadcasting is fun. I know that. It can be, there are 1 or 2 downsides, and I'm thinking specifically about family. You have to be at a studio early in the morning or late at night for you. I would imagine your family probably doesn't like to discuss weekends that much. I'm sure it must be quite tricky. I mean, it's something you do have to balance.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that probably over the years, I've balanced it by including, certainly I've got a lot of children, Stephen. I don't know if you know that. I've got 6 in total.
I have been told, yes.
Yeah. Yes, I've got 6 in total. So my 2 older ones, I used to include them in Super Saturday. So, and they were all friendly. As I said, as a group of people, whether it was Terry Payne, Mike Hazeman, Pumlani, the late Pumlani Masibi, Ed Jordan, we used to hang out together. So we would have, Ed would have his Christmas sing-along, his Christmas carol get-together, and we'd bring all of the kids and the families together. So it was one big happy family in that sense. So a lot of it, and at times I would include Melissa and Gregory, those are my two oldest, as props. So, for example, it's worth telling the story because one day England were playing the Springboks at Twickenham, and so I brought my kids in dressed in Springbok tops, and then we had a little bit of a skit where Terry said he's going to take them for a cup of tea, and when they came back, he'd put them into England jerseys. And of course, they were told, look miserable. And so they were sort of crying next to Terry, and then we said, what have you done? And he said, no, matey, the England are going to win. So stuff like that. So they were part of it. But yes, I mean, there are hours and hours away. I must be honest, because people say to me over the years, you must have done a lot of traveling. And I did I've done a lot of traveling, which interestingly enough came through my poker involvement, going to Las Vegas most of the time. But I was always a studio anchor, Stephen. So I was never really the person that was at the stadium where it was being played. I was always the person that people were handing back to with my studio guests to facilitate analysis. So in that sense, I actually haven't traveled as much as others.
Neil, I don't want to pry into your family too much because it is none of my business. So tell me if you're not comfortable and we'll change the subject.
No, not at all.
But I know...
Fire away. I've got nothing to hide.
I know that when you got married, you had what many people in South Africa call a traditional wedding. Someone actually, I won't tell you who, sent me some videos of it earlier. And you're bringing up children that have parents that come from different cultures. And I wondered what your experience of that was in Mzansi, in South Africa, right now. A lot of people, there are many, many families like yours. Sometimes they're blended families. Sometimes they're families where the parents come from different backgrounds. And I just wondered if you found that as comfortable, considering how interesting and difficult our country can be, if you'd found it as comfortable as you had hoped it would be, or maybe actually you found it a lot easier than maybe you thought you would.
I found it exceptionally easy. I'm not so sure I had any expectations because I was just drawn to my wife the day I met her. It was just instantaneous. So I don't think there was an immediate connectivity. So perhaps I should have thought about it, but I didn't. And likewise, when we've had children together, I think it was very organic. I never thought about it, but I must tell you that it has been the biggest blessing and joy because I think it's eased me into a new world as well. I think sometimes as old traditional South Africans, we weren't allowed to share in some of the enjoyment and entertainment and life from other cultures. And I've absolutely loved it. So, and dare I say, I seem to be loved by my family. So, Pops, who's my wife's grandfather. I was born on the 16th of July, so my family name is Nkululeko, which is freedom. And it's just fantastic for me to go to family gatherings and for him to welcome me and say, hello, my son, Nkululeko. So it's interesting. This is a broad statement, but, I don't think some, European families, if I can call them that, actually have that. We seem to live in a little bit more siloed. So that's a very sweeping statement. I'm sure there's some very closely knit families out there. But for me, I can't even express how I've enjoyed it. And and I definitely think I'm parenting better the second time around for various reasons. But I'm blessed whichever way you look at it.
Do you think that might make you a better broadcaster?
That's a very good question. It probably does because, of course, now broadcasting in modern day South Africa, and quite rightly, is embracing more cultures. We're telling more stories. I like what you said earlier. That certainly is what MultiChoice and indeed SuperSport is about. We want to tell stories and we want to entertain. It's not just delivering live sport. I mean, that's fantastic, but we want to see the stories behind it, the personal stories. So I suspect I am more in touch with my fellow South Africans in general because of that. But again, I've never given it much thought. I think I'm very fortunate that most of my career has come organically, and to that end, I think it was a perfect fit. I was qualified as a teacher, so I did my teaching degree and I taught for a while. But I did get a sense that I probably would be happier, spreading my wings into broadcasting. And I think it was a good decision.
No, I mean, I think the whole country would rise and applaud and agree with you. You made the point about people asking you, how did you get into broadcasting? Because they want to do the same thing. And you also spoke about how the world is changing. Do you think there's a future in broadcasting? I mean, my own sense is that if there is, and I think there must be for various reasons, but certainly sport will be one of the big parts of it because of that live shared experience. But the kind of sports broadcasting you're doing now, so commentating on a live horse race or commentating on a live match or hosting something like a sort of Super Saturday because you have created a community of people who are interested in something and you've created characters who are interesting and so people want to watch that. Do you think there's still a future in that? And by future, I do mean kind of 30 years out.
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? Because you wonder where AI is going, and every time I listen to an AI podcast, they tell me every single job's going to go down the Swanee, and I have no reason to believe that broadcasting won't be the same. So in that sense, I don't know what's around the corner. But what I will say is that what you now need to do to be successful and popular is you need quality and authenticity. I've got to be careful how I position this. I think that sometimes some of what we're asked to consume is not great. And as a result, people won't be attracted to it. But I think if you turn out quality broadcasting, which comes into all of this about authenticity, knowledge, entertainment, the ability to have an anchor who can facilitate good conversation with creditable guests, then I think people will watch. Having said that, of course, now post-COVID, everything's sped up and people are consuming it perhaps in smaller bites. So when we brought Super Saturday back post-COVID, I was at pains to point out I can't see anybody sitting for 90 minutes anymore on a Saturday morning and watching the whole show. Doesn't matter how good we are. So we're going to have to maybe highlight some of the best parts of that show and put it out onto socials. So I think that you have to think about that. I just don't. And my own, by the way, if I can say, Stephen, when I grew up, I watched the Tour de France. I never missed a stage. I wouldn't miss a stage from beginning to end. Now, a year goes past and I have to ask someone, who won the Tour de France? So that's just my own personal television time. I mean, we used to, I think like most people, you watch the Mnet movie on a Sunday night and then watch Carte Blanche. Now no one even sits on the couch. So broadcasting is never going to go back to where it was, but that opens up opportunities, I guess, for people who are good broadcasters.
Yeah. Neil Andrews, thank you very much. Some very interesting comments and thoughts and insights, not just into broadcasting, but into our society as well. Neil, thank you. I really do appreciate the time on The Money Show, the Supersport broadcaster and anchor telling you how he makes my money.